Here we go.
You really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Hey, motherfucker. What do you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
They give off to Jonathan Taylor. Jump cutting his way. Close to the goal line. He's in there. Touchdown. I-N-D-Y. Jonathan Taylor.
Wheeler finds Quan from the logo.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it! Hits it!
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I know it, Boilermaker fans. Last night, you had a team in the second half that looked out of gas. That's a bummer, too, because for them, they had set themselves up in such a great place. After going out west, and I'm sitting here lauding them, loving them, and it's great in Seattle and great in Eugene. Look what they did. And then you come back home. And I was talking to our resident big-time Boilermaker fan, Todd Meyer, executive producer, before the show. And I'd said, you could tell in the second half, we were discussing this. Brian Newbert, I think, in Golden Black has an article about this as well. You could tell that they got worn out in the second half, certainly. And again, there's no excuses here because that is the way it's going to be in the Big Ten. That's what Mick Cronin has been saying. Some would suggest whining about, crying about, whatever, yelling about, screaming about. That is going to be the way that it is. There's going to be a great deal of travel. Honestly, you can look at a team like Purdue, for example. I mean, at least you're in the middle. And you're not having to go from West Coast to Rutgers or to Maryland or anything like that. I mean, at least you are, in terms of scheduling in the Big Ten, in the middle. But Brian Newbert had the article about running out of gas and how teams that have gone out west come back and they fumble. And I'd mentioned the Todd. You could tell what was going down with the Boilers in the first half, I felt. You know, even as they were stretching out their lead, 13, 14, 15 plus, I think it got up to as high as 16. But the problem is, Ohio State in the first half, they were ripe to go away. Their leading scorer was deferring at the point of attack, maybe a little bit after the point of attack. He was deferring. It was a lot of Bruce Thornton kicking out going on. And the Buckeyes were ripe in that first half to be sideswiped and sung a lullaby. And Purdue didn't do it. You just kind of thought that this may not end well. I will say, you win 26 at home, that would probably be on my list, one of the last that I felt that the Boilermakers would lose. But, man, what an atrocious second half that was. And you let a team up off the mat. Let me tell you, oftentimes in sports, when you do that, when you give a little helper to a team, when they're basically done and you show them a little bit of the way, that's problematic. 73-70. Boilermakers outscored, holy crap, 45-29 in the second half. 29 points in the second half. Somebody had mentioned this to me. I think it was Showalter or somebody, that Braden Smith shoots too much. Well, the problem with Braden Smith is he missed too much. His sights were off. That's the issue. I mean, hell, listen, his offense is going to be magnified where he's going to have to score a lot more with this team than certainly he did the past 2 years. We've known that going in. But his assists aren't being sidetracked because of it. I think he's still a tick under 10 right now. He's still dropping dimes to everybody, but 3 of 14. As I mentioned this morning on X, his sights were off, and there is not a great deal of margin for error with this team. Really, you can look across the board. most teams in college basketball can't blank around. If you lose a little bit of it, then you may end up losing the game because you have a lot of teams that are very close in proximity to one another, and I mean across the national college basketball landscape. I mean, Caleb First looked stiff as a board out there last night. And we've been talking about him and the feel good that he's provided. You know, I'd brought up yesterday when we had Rafael Davis on the show about Purdue that, you know, one of the things that you wanted to get kickstarted with Fletcher Lawyer. And, you know, Fletcher Lawyer, I think, was 6 of 12, somewhere in that neighborhood, had 15 points. But the second half Boilermakers, they were just awful. And again, you can talk about them being tired and having dead legs, and you're right, but that's what those that have made those long trips now in the new blueprint of the Big Ten, they have been talking about this, and the Boilermakers got a heavy dose of it. But the Boilermakers had an opportunity in the first half, and I mean really not to salt away the game, but to make the Buckeyes feel incredibly bad for themselves. But like any other team that really wants to battle, if you give them a reason to get up off the mat, then more than likely they will, and you saw Ohio State do that last night. And down the tubes goes the home win streak for the Boilermakers. 73-70 is the final. And there was already a premium on this game, but even more of a premium now for Purdue coming up on Friday night against Michigan. You know, in a world of Big Ten, which is incredibly unconventional now with the travel schedule and all the teams, you get that locked-in 8 o'clock Friday nighter like you had last week and won in overtime on the road in Columbus over Ohio State. Michigan and Dusty May at West Lafayette coming up on Friday, and Dusty May is going to join us at about 5:40 today. I think they were jacking around with the practice schedule. He sent me something today. He goes, hey, I'm going to be in practice until about 5:30 today. I said, man, you're the coach. Stop jacking with the practice schedule, all right? Make it more conducive for your Greene County ass to be on this show. We got a pretty good laugh out of that. Dusty's going to join us coming up at about 5:30, 5:40, somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe around 5:40. We will close out the show with Dusty May, the head coach of Michigan. You know what's funny? If there is a coach that is used to it, I was thinking about this, and this is one of the questions I'll ask, and I'm not suggesting the players are used to it. Listen, these guys aren't riding buses everywhere or anything like that. I mean, they're getting nice travel. It is travel. It is that. And I'm sure it's wear and tear. But I'm not going to, play the world's smallest violin for everybody here because this is something I would have to expect 95% of us, and I mean me and you listening right now, we would give our left, whatever we may have on the left, to be participating in right now. Right now. I would right now. I'd say, here's the left one. Take it. Because it sounds fun as hell to me. Always has and always will. Just not been nearly talented enough to do anything like it. But it's the name of the game. This is the growth that continues. It's funny. I thought really when it comes down to it that maybe the Pac-12 should have merged almost entirely with the Big Ten, and then you just have divisions, Pac-12 and Big Ten or something like that, instead of just having everybody fumble about across the country now in different conferences. But, hell, that's not me. Just a thought right there. But Boilermaker fans last night got a heavy dose of the here and now of the Big Ten, and I can tell you that's expected. And that's expected of a team that it's not in the category of being dominant and having an absolute sure thing every single night as we have seen the past 2 years. Never had to worry about that. Now you got to worry about that. I just thought early this season I'd mentioned it was weird watching Purdue play for the first couple of times this season because other teams so easily got to the glass on them. Just weird to see. And they're used to that now. I mean, Trey Kaufman-Wren's playing fantastic basketball. He did again last night. But this team has, unlike with Zach Edey, where other guys could have margin for error because this dude was going to take up all the space that was necessary. There is very little margin for error across the board with this group. And our guy Braden can't have a 3 from 14 like that. And he did, and they lose, win streak over, and they get 14-4 and 6-1 in the Big Ten. Michigan, Dusty May coming up on Friday. Again, Dusty joins us coming up at about 5:40 today. Michigan State 7-0 in the conference, 16-2 overall. Boilermakers, by the way, fall to 7-2 and 15-5 overall in the season. Oregon 5-3. Whiskey last night with a loss on